Hi everyone, Emma here. I'm going to show you how to start even count peyote. I decided to do this because there's a whole bunch of bracelet videos I want to show you, and of course they all start with a beginning of even count peyote, and I would like to be able to just direct you to that so that the video doesn't end up being an hour and a half, which I just finished one that was. So let's hope this is a little bit kind of a quick kind of troubleshoot stuff and let you know if you're not familiar with peyote. Um, it's one of my favorite things. Like, you can make anything with this, so don't be shy about trying it. You can use any beads. As you can see, I'm using rounds. Let me see here. Where are my delicas? So here are delicas. If you're not um, familiar with doing it with round beads, it's slightly different just because they don't sit together the way a delica does. Then definitely use a delica. If you don't have any delicas, you can use treasures. They're nice and tubular, so they'll sit side by side. But for this demonstration, the reason I'm doing it with this round is because I'm getting ready to show you another bracelet video, so it's convenient for me to use these. So we're going to start with 18 beads, and that is um, to do with this specific bracelet. These are Rokai 11O galvanized muscat. They look like rose gold. So I'm not sure where the name comes from, but they look rose gold to me. They're so delicious to work with. And so I went ahead, here's my thread. I'm using, oh, I can't remember the name brand of this one. This is like a Nymo thread, so it's a bunch of fibers put together. And the reason I mention that is I use beeswax to wax my thread. So you can see the beeswax. I got this on Amazon, in case you're wondering. The block is about this big, and it came with like 8 blocks of these in a package for, I can't remember. It was super cheap. So what I do is I take a X-Acto knife and I cut a square about that big so I can throw it in with my stuff. So like, this is one that I've been using for a while, and I've got one over here. So I just stick them in the different project trays when I'm working. So I always have my wax. Very important to wax your thread because it twists when you're beading. Let me see if get this a little lighter here. There. So I take an arm span of thread, I wax it, and then I put a stop bead. I'm just using a broken twin bead here. I usually leave a tail long enough to add stuff to it. This is probably longer than what you need. I would maybe say about this much, enough to thread back in. I don't recommend you adding your clasp with this thread, because if you do, it'll kind of move the beads around of your peyote. So the best thing is to use a separate strand. This way, if your clasp gets broken or comes off, you're not going to lose all your beads on your peyote. So okay, so this pattern is starting with 18 beads. So even count is exactly what it sounds like. You need an even count of beads to start with. And this way, when you do your turns, and I'll explain what that is when we get to it, but when you do your turns, it's very simple. There is something called odd count, where, for instance, I just finished the video on this bracelet here. Because there is a midpoint that is 1 bead, then you need an odd count because you have even beads on either side of that midpoint. If this was all even count peyote, then you would either not have a midpoint, your midpoint would be up one or down one, or you would have two beads here of the same color. So that's why designs will sometimes ask for an odd count, because you need it centered. And I have tried to do it without it when I was just learning, and yeah, I made a mess of it. But anyway, in this video I show you how to do odd count. It's very simple. Now I say that I've been doing it for a while, so it makes it easier, but I tried my best to show you with this video to see if there was a way to explain it to you. So let's get started. So let's bring these down to your stop bead like that. And a good way to hang on to it is like this. Let me see. So maybe with the stop bead, this is a bit longer, so it's a bit awkward here. You're going to pick up a bead and you're going to skip the first bead and go through the second bead. So, and you're going through the top of that bead. So let me bring that down, and I'll just let that come down. And it should sit. Sometimes you have to coax it, especially since we're using round beads. And it creates, let me enlarge this. It creates this little T, or a capital I situation. Then you're going to pick up your next bead. So you're coming out of this bead here. There's your thread. You're going to skip the next bead and you're going to go down from the top of the next bead like that. And I'm just holding on to my stuff. It's a bit tricky, so don't get too stressed. This is supposed to be fun, but it does, because there's not a lot to hang on to. So let me see if I can show this to you. So now you have another side by side, and let's just kind of even this out a bit. There. Okay, so we're going to pick up another one. We're coming out of this bead here. We're going to skip it. Let me get my thread so you can see it. So you're coming out of this bead here. You're going to skip the next one and go down through the top of the following one like that. There. This, when you're doing using round beads, because they don't sit snug to each other, they're going to arch like that, but when you come around to do your next row, it will all pull it in. So don't stress out. So your thread's coming out of this bead. You're going to skip the next bead. You're going to go down through the bead down through the top of the next bead, and you've got your next bead on there. And pull. There. Like I said, it just arches a bit. Pick up your next bead. You're coming out of this bead. You're going to skip this bead. You're going to go down through the top of the following bead. Get in here. And the only reason why my thread is acting this way is because there's still like a lot of wax on it. So it gets a bit sticky. Not a big deal. Once they go through a few times, it's not as sticky. There. There's your next one. Pick up another one. Coming out of this bead, skip that one, go through this one. pull that in. And you can move it like with your fingers, so now it's a little straighter. Okay, pick up another bead. Coming out of this one, you're going to skip that one and come through this one. Oh, I think I went through a bunch of beads there. Okay, pull it tight. So now pick up your bead. You're coming out of this bead, you're going to skip this one and go through this one. And just see what happened there. That will happen, not a big deal. You know what's a big deal is when you get going on your bracelet and you realize that you've got a big thread going across. I've had that happen more than once. So pick up your bead, coming out of this one, you're going to skip this one and go through the next one. Try and get my thread not to tangle. And you can kind of push your stop bead up there with your nail. And this is what you have so far. So it still looks a bit kind of willy-nilly. You'll see a big difference once we get our next row in. So here, I'll just mention this. The first 18 beads that we put on there, that's considered 2 rows. Then the row that we just finished is considered the 3rd row. The only reason I'm saying this, if you decide to follow a pattern and it says it counts off the rows where you're doing different beads for them, you're going to need to know that. And that's only because if you see the way they sit, if you were to count this, you would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it crisscrosses. So now we're at the bottom. We're going to go up the top. So we've got 1 bead. We're going to go through this bead here. You're basically going through the beads that are sticking out. So you'll see how this one will sit like that. I'm just going to pull this a bit tight there. There. Now, your thread's coming out of here. You're going to add a bead and go through this one. And then you're going through each bead that's sticking out. So you're going to put a bead in these little slots. Then those beads end up being the sticking out beads when you flip it around and do the next row. So once you have this set up, the rest is super simple. So if you can just hang in there for this process, this part is so much fun because you don't have to think about it. It's intuitive where to put your beads. So just pick up a bead. We're coming out of here. We're going to go into the next sticking out bead. Let me see if I can get this in focus better. Hang on to that so it doesn't distort it. There. So there, it's really starting to get snazzy. It's very snazzy. So you're coming out of this one. We've got our bead on our needle. We're going to go through the next sticking out bead. On the same side, you can kind of you can take this and twist it, but it's not a good idea. It starts to distort your work a bit, and it just makes things more difficult for you. So you pick up your bead, you're coming out of this one, we're going to go into this one. Pick up a bead, coming out of this one, go into this one. The thread gets hooked on stuff on my desk. There, pull it tight. Pick up a bead, coming out of this one, go into this one. I think I can shorten my thread here. There we go. So when I said shorten my thread, what I meant was when I'm doing a video, I will often fold over my thread a huge distance that I wouldn't normally when I'm beading, but I do it so that you're not watching me pull thread through all the time, but it will get stuck. So you're coming out of this one, you're going to go into this one. There. This is our last one on this side. So you're coming out of here, we're going to go through here. We've already got our bead on our needle. There, like that. So now we're ready to go down this way. So to make it easier, it is definitely easier if you bring your needle forward, but you know what? Some people like to bead this way, and I actually find myself doing it a lot. So, but I think that's more comfort from doing it for a long time. So we are coming out of this one here. We want to go into the next sticking out bead. We've got our bead on there. Just do this. Now this happens. See how what it's done is the bead that we had in there that we went through is coming loose. So all you have to do is take your thread here and hang on to it till you get your thread through, and you can actually put your finger on that bead so it doesn't move around, and then tighten. When you go to the next one, you can tighten it again, and I'll show you how to do that. So pick up your seed bead. You're coming out of this one, you're going to go into this one here. So if you're worried, like if you see a lot of thread here, because that was the one that got loose, all you have to do is take your fingernail and pull the bead down, this one here, and then pull it up tight, and it will snug it up perfectly. So get your next bead. You're coming out of this bead, you're going to go into the next sticking out bead. That. Pick up a bead, coming out of this one, going into this one. Pick up a bead, you're coming out of this bead, you're going to go into the next sticking out bead. And I like to hang on to my work close to that bead, but I need to show you what I'm doing, so I'll move my finger. Pick up a bead, coming out of this one here. You're going to skip that one, you're going to go through. You just have to remember, go through your sticking out beads. Pick up another, coming out of this one, go into this one. Pick up a bead, coming out of this bead, you're going to go into this one. Pick up a bead, coming out of this one, go into this one, and then we will turn around. So now, this one's a little different, but you're still going through your sticking out bead. So you're going to pick up a bead, go through the next sticking out bead, like that. And you'll see it'll sit nicely, create your edge right there. So we'll keep going, we'll go a little faster. Like that. You can see how addictive this would be. It's very, once you get going, it's very quick. And then you can start to make it more difficult by putting designs in it, changing the color of the beads, changing the shape of the beads. And this demonstration came out of a video I'm going to be doing on a bracelet, and I need to start peyote before I start the unique design feature, and I didn't want the video to be too long, but I also wanted to be able to show you how to do it if you needed to, so I will be directing you to this. And I just want to show you something too in a second here. Let's get this one in. I don't know if you can see this little white spot. That's the wax. It's not a big deal. You can kind of scoop it with your needle or your nail, or the heat of your hand will melt it and it'll go away. It's not a big deal. So there we go. One more here. So feel free to ask any questions. Um, sometimes I'm explaining stuff, it doesn't make sense. So unless I know that there's a certain problem, or I went too fast, or you couldn't see, definitely let me know. This is so much fun. I'm like the ambassador of sharing fun stuff with people, so I want you to have fun too. So there you go. Thanks for joining me, and stay tuned for the wonderful bracelet that's going to be part of this design. Take care, everybody. Bye.